Call the meeting to order, meeting of the Carver Select Board on Thursday, April 16th, 2020. We are handling this meeting remotely by Zoom. Pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12th, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the Open Meeting Law, General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 18, in the Governor's March 15th, 2020 order imposing strict limitations on the number of people that may gather in one place. This meeting of the Carver Select Board is being conducted via remote participation. No in-person attendance of members of the public will be permitted, but every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceedings as provided in the order. Just a reminder that Area 58, as a result of the thunder and lightning storm and resulting power outages the other evening, a piece of equipment that's vital to putting this out live is still not up and running yet. So as a consequence, this is being recorded and will be rebroadcast as soon as the link is made available, and it will be posted at the Town Hall website as well as all the other usual places that we post this. We are still, the purpose of the meeting is to attempt to execute a new contract with for an interim town administrator, Rick LaFond, and we need to go into executive session for the purpose of finalizing the contract and determining whether Mr. LaFond is willing to accept the offer. Is there a motion to go to an executive session pursuant to General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21A2, to conduct negotiations for non-union personnel, interim town administrator, and to reconvene in open session?
So moved.
Second.
Further discussion? Mark Townsend?
Aye. Mark Townsend. Aye.
Sarah Hewins?
Sarah Hewen says aye.
Bob Belbin?
Robert Belbin says aye.
Alan Dunham?
Alan Dunham says aye.
Ron Clark says aye. We are now moving to executive session. A separate link will be sent out, so you can leave this meeting and then reply to the invitation you should have received from Sarah to go into executive session. We will return to open session to complete, if any, contract vote on Mr. LaFond and to recognize what the highlights of that contract may be, and then to adjourn in open session. Thank you. All right. Call the meeting back to order. Meeting of the Carver Select Board on Thursday morning, well, now Thursday afternoon at, call it 1:33. And we're coming back into open session after having been in executive session. At this point, I will call for a vote on executing a contract with Mr. Rick LaFond to become the interim town administrator for the town of Carver. Is there a motion to do so?
I'll make that motion. Also, I would, as part of that, that this will be a roll call vote.
And Sarah Hewins is on the telephone remotely due to technical difficulties. So there's a motion for it to be a roll call. Is there a second? Motion made and seconded. Alan Dunham. Any other discussion? Being none, Alan Dunham. Sarah seconded, Elaine.
Okay,
Alan Dunham?
This is for the contract for Rick, correct?
That's correct.
Alan Dunham says aye.
Sarah? Sarah Hewen said aye. Mark Townsend?
Mark Townsend says aye.
Bob Belbin?
Says no.
Bob Belbin says no. Ron Clark says aye. The motion passes 4-1. Rick LaFond has been hired to be our town administrator. I'm going to go through the highlights now. We will excuse Mr. Belbin at this point because he has to go to work. Thank you, Bob, for participating.
Thank you guys very much for all your help with this, okay?
And thank you for your efforts in putting all this together.
All right, bye-bye, guys. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, I just want to run through the highlights of the contract. Mr. LaFond has been hired as an interim town administrator effective April 18th. He will be part-time for 3 weeks at the rate of $1,200 a week. He will be full-time from May 11th, 2020 to June 30th, 2021 for $150,000 for covering from May 11th, 2020 through June 30th, 2021. His contract is then renews automatically for 6 months from July 1st, 2021 until December 31st, 2021 at a salary of $77,500, which is half of a $155,000 annualized salary. However, the only guaranteed portion of that is the $77,500 for the 6 months from July 1st, 2021 to December 31st, 2021. Essentially then, Mr. LaFond will serve as the interim town administrator to the end of the current 2020 fiscal year. He will then serve as an interim town administrator for 18 months, beginning July 1st, 2020 until December 31st, 2021. The town has options to extend his contract throughout that period of time. The town also reserves the right to go out and begin a permanent search committee at any point throughout that period of time. I want to send out thanks to Area 58. I know that after the loss of their power, after the power loss resulted in damages to the equipment that prevented us from going out live, they've done everything they can to try to accommodate us. Zoom also has been challenged because the rest of the world is using Zoom from everything for business purposes to, I think, playing games and getting in touch with family at this time. So that I want to extend thanks again to Mark Townsend and Bob Belbin. They have well, since Friday, I guess, put in yeoman's work and even up till that point in time, negotiating a contract with Mr. LaFond, bringing it to us, revising it, you know, and I would just say that I think what's important to remember that if there's any disagreement on hiring Mr. LaFond for this length of time, the board placed a tremendous value in the fact that we're in the middle of a national crisis. And we, as I've mentioned many times before, that's the primary reason we went anything beyond what is typically, and we will acknowledge the typical interim term is for 6 to 12 months. So that, you know, by way of that purpose. Did anybody else want to add any other comments before we sign off? In case you didn't hear that, Sarah wanted to thank Bob and Mark as well for the effort they put in. I know we've spoken to that, and I know that it's quite something. And you know, we want to welcome Mr. LaFond aboard. The one final thing I will mention is that Mr. Dunham and I had been anticipating in a week and a half that we would be off the board. It appears that from conversations I've had, it's going to be some time before the thought of allowing 300 people to gather in a room is going to take place. So our terms have been extended, and we're more than happy to do that while we're in the middle of the crisis as we are. However, in the interest of Mr. LaFond coming on and replacing Mr. Milanowski, I felt it was appropriate, since we'd be on the verge of reorganizing anyway, to step down as chair effective immediately, and to suggest at our next meeting that we start with reorganization, so that for the immediate purposes, Mr. Townsend as vice chair will be acting chair until our next meeting. I'm doing this because, in all honesty, I think we're transitioning. We have a new TA coming on board, and I think it makes sense to, in the interest of that transition, change the leadership on the board. I would like to leave you with my strong suggestion that Mr. Townsend continue at least to the end until we have an election. My recommendation would be Mr. Townsend be chair until the end of the. My recommendation would be that Mr. Townsend be chair until we can have an election at the very least. I've worked with Mark; he's been exceptional to work with. He's up to speed on everything. He and I have discussed many of the issues as they come up, and by the way, I did mention this to him ahead of time. I'm not I would never surprise something like this otherwise. So with that, it's been a pleasure to serve as your chair. But I think going forward that, again, my recommendation is that Mr. Townsend continue as chair if you so choose. And I will, of course, support whatever decision the board makes at reorganization. With that, is there a motion to adjourn?
Motion to
So
adjourn.
moved.
Second.
Further discussion? Being none, those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? The ayes have it. Thank you very much.
Have a great-